Good evening, everyone. I am blessed. Uh, we are welcoming everybody to the third Corporate Education Online. So for tonight's topic, it will be building your conflict management competency. So May 19, we're starting at, well, it's 7 p.m. So we're going to start na with the whole activity for tonight. So my co-host for tonight is a corporate educator, writer, and editor, HR consultant at Tams Adams Marketing Services. So with that, kapatid, it's your turn, AJ, to introduce our guest for tonight. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we are very privileged because we have a very special guest. She's a globally um, known speaker and facilitator, an HR practitioner and author. But she would rather be no, but she would rather be um, known to be introduced as a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ, and also, most of all, the daughter of the bridegroom, Jesus Christ. So, without much ado, I would like to present to you our guest who will teach us on conflict management, Miss Daisy Calianta. Ma'am Daisy?
Hello, good evening, everybody. It's so nice to actually be here. So, saying hi to everybody on board. Thank you, Miss B and Sir AJ.
Yes.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah.
So, Miss Daisy, I'm just curious because of this word, conflict. Can you define what conflict is for us?
I made sure that I have the proper notes, no? So, I actually have here, para hindi ko makot ng mali, the Merriam-Webster definition. It
Okay.
defines conflict as a fight, a battle, a war. It also gives another definition. It says an opposing action. And another one, it says incompatible needs, opinions, etc. Now, if you're going to be looking at the definition as based on what we've just heard right now, it's not surprising that often people avoid it, dread it. In fact, whenever you mention the word conflict, because if Merriam-Webster is defining it as a fight, a battle, or a war, then it means people are always put on a defensive side whenever they hear the word conflict. But I would rather we not look at it as such, because
Hmm?
conflict by itself, in itself, if we remain neutral, is not actually automatically bad. Conflict is just simply meaning difference in opinion, difference in perspective, just difference, right? I think what makes it negative is when we take it personally. So tonight, I hope through the discussion that we're actually having right now, we'll be able to actually help others be given a different perspective, that it's not automatically bad, neither is it automatically a problem. That conflict, when managed properly, can actually be a doorway of opportunity.
Okay, thank you for that very clear definition, Daisy. Now, you're a Jesus follower, right?
Yes.
And how can we apply Jesus' teachings when it comes to conflict management?
It's just funny. Often, when people look at the Bible, they would normally just look at it as a scripture a handbook, a manual to others that you often just pick up and read whenever you're needing of spiritual advice or a guidance. But truth be told, the Bible in its sense tackles about different topics. It tackles about finances, it tackles about parenthood, and even conflict management in its sense. As a follower of Christ, yes, I do read books. Yes, as an HR practitioner for 25 years, I make it a habit that I really learn and keep myself updated about latest things, updates about teachings and the like. But personally, as a Christian and as a follower of Christ, nothing beats the Bible. even in conflict management, you can actually have a verse that you can use in terms of conflict management. And if I may say so, let me quote that on Ephesians 4:29. And it says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." So if you're going to actually look at it as a baseline, if people would just really learn to talk about conflict in a respectful, wholesome manner, without looking at it as a personal attack on others, I don't think there will be much trouble or problem when it comes to conflict.
I see. So we can see the element or the component of the tongue coming in, right? The
Yes.
proper use of the tongue. Now, when it comes to Jesus's life, he exhibited servant leadership. And how can principles of servant leadership apply to conflict management?
As I've mentioned a while ago, often conflict arise, with the way people react to it. I don't like to use the word respond, because if people respond to conflict properly, there won't be a problem. I think a lot of times conflict arises when people react without thinking about it, when people react because they think it's more of a personal attack to the person rather than the issue itself. Now, if a person is like, for example, me, right? Oftentimes people in the level of C's, CEO, CFO, what have you, in the highest level for any corporate
Mhm.
place at that, when somebody tries to question you, if you're gonna take it as a question of your authority, then that will be something that you will take it against on people. And I don't think that is right, because I think conflict, when managed properly, is very helpful. I mean, can you imagine? I think my husband, my John, my husband is is also joining us in Zoom. Can you imagine if I'm married to John and John's personality is totally so like me? Well, first off, it's either we have conflict every day or no conflict at all. Because if he thinks the way I equally think, there's not much to actually talk about. Can you imagine a marriage like that? It won't be such a good thing at all, because it's like marrying yourself. It's like talking to yourself. And if there's no conflict, nothing brings out the worst and the best in you. And in conflict, that's where your character actually comes in. So personally, I don't shy away from conflict. I actually entertain the same, provided that there is a rule that everybody becomes respectful in the way they actually set their thoughts across. Because Jesus, when he actually was, he exampled and modeled the way, there is no one else greater than God. I mean, I'm a CEO, people shy away from me, but can you imagine the kind of authority, the highest of authority he already held? He is the creator of all things, he is the Son of God, yet he never at any point pushed people into, forcing into them his authority. The way he actually influenced them and made significant impact on their life is because he served them. He actually served them in humility. And not only that, if we say we're followers of Christ and God never chose to be in the center of a conflict but choose to be peacemakers, then we have to be the same. A servant cannot be more than the master. If you quote on Matthew 5:9, one of my favorite verses, it says, "Blessed are those that are peacemakers, for they shall be called the Son of God." So if I claim to be a Christian and if I claim to be a follower of Christ, and I always fight with people unreasonably because I am just proud, then that in its sense is actually lying, right? I mean, if you follow Christ, that means you can't be above him. Be like him, be transformed, and be humble in the way that he did so.
Okay, thank you. When it comes to, because based on your explanation, there's the importance of meekness and humility,
Ay, oo naman.
no? So how do we develop a mindset of
Well,
being meek
first,
and humble? Is it a mindset, ma'am?
actually, more than the mindset, it's a purposeful intention or decision. Kasi ang mindset changes depending on your mood, no? So if you're in a high-spirited mood, it's easier to actually think good about people when you're in high spirits, right? But when you're in the middle of a conflict, and sometimes the person who is trying to start the conflict is not so nice, right? It's kind of not so easy to also hold your countenance, so to speak, or your patience, right? So from where I'm at, one of the things that you can actually teach yourself first before you can even have a change mindset is you have to actually change your view on people. You know, the word conflict in its sense, it's not towards the person, but the issue itself. We have to learn to separate our feelings on the person who's speaking it and the issue itself. Because if you take away that and you're just focusing on a very objective, non emotional issue, then maturity comes into play. You can be more objective when you're actually tackling into a problem. But when you look at it from an attack, that's when conflict arises, right? Because you will never be able to resolve issue if both parties think they're justified. How do I say this? There's always a dissenting opinion. There's always point of views. And if I'm the one saying it, from my perspective, I feel I'm right. From the other's perspective, though it's opposing, that person also feels he's right. So if both feels that they're justified, do you think any one of them would lower down or humble themselves into reconciling? No, because to them, there is no work needed to be done on my end. I'm right, I'm blameless, therefore I'm justified. If he doesn't say sorry, therefore I will not say sorry. And this is where humility comes in. Sometimes it's really not an issue whether you're right or you're wrong. It is an issue of, do you want to have peace? Do you want to have an issue or a conflict resolved? And it takes one person who is humble enough to come down and say, come on, let's talk.
Okay, and it takes faith to do that.
Yes.
And when do we say that, or is there any Christian perspective that involves faith
A lot of
and
it. I mean,
God?
humility,
When, yeah,
AJ, I think humility in a sense, regardless of faith, is a choice. You know, I've known a
yes.
lot of people who's not necessarily a Christian who is very humble, right? But I think
Mhm.
if faith is what drives humility, that helps. You know, because if humility is based on your decision, sometimes you can also choose not to be humble. But if you anchor it on your faith and the example of Christ, even if sometimes you are wanting not to be humble but be right, but faith brings you back into what could have Jesus do in such a situation. And I think that's what sets us apart. You know, the ability to be able to hold off is not based on our ability only to be patient, but being a Christian, the Holy Spirit enables us to become peacemakers. And I think that is not something you control. That is something that you only get when you surrender and you yield. That takes a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Daisy. Well, I would like to turn the mic now to my partner Bless regarding it's because it's a more appropriate topic because it's about gender.
Ikaw talaga.
So, partner Bless, take it
All
away.
right. Okay, sige. For the women's perspective now, Miss Daisy, what is the significance of considering a woman's perspective on conflict management? Kasi gender plays a lot right now sa environment natin, no? Lalo sa workplace.
Malaki din kasi, Miss B, in the sense that most of the conflicts kasi that arise is perception sometimes. You know, how you view things. Have you heard about the saying, what you think becomes you? Right? What you think
Yeah.
becomes you. So let's say you view conflict as a plague, for example. If you look at conflict as a plague, Of course, it's a sickness like coronavirus. You wouldn't come near it. You will avoid it, the in at all costs. And everybody who has it, you would also avoid, right? So in similar manner, if your perspective about your gender as a woman is based on the fact that just because you're a woman, therefore it's conflict, then it'll be hard
Yeah.
because you will not even dare do anything outside what the social norm will require. So, you know, I wouldn't dare to even be a CEO at that if I felt that I would be limited by the gender that I have, or that I will avoid conflict simply because of my gender. I mean, that's a lot of it has to do with the way you think about things. Most of the fears that we often have are actually based on unfounded fears. Sometimes it's not even happening, it's just because the social norm dictates that. Well, to me, though it's a given, unless you try, you lose your right of voice to complain. So to me, I would just rather do it, put myself vulnerable out there. And if somebody treats me unfairly just because because of my gender, well, that's not something I need to defend, because just by looking at me, that's justification already in its sense. And
Oo.
you know, you 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 can't win a person by trying to justify you being a woman. What you can do is just earn that person's respect, that the person sees you as a CEO, as an executive, rather than see you as a woman. Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. And then the next question would be, how can we as individuals develop the conflict management competency?
It's a choice, no? I like yung talk last week with Sir Paul, no? Because it talks about emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. Leaders often have traits that makes you be set apart from others, because many people can lead, all people can lead. Actually, it's a choice that anybody can do, but not all people are actually able to become successful leaders at that and hold and maintain. Any person can just get a position of that, but to maintain in that position, that takes a lot. That takes intelligence, that takes emotional quotient. And people don't normally highlight the fact that on top of these, you also need what you call conflict competence quotient. Many leaders are very good, but when they start encountering issues within the team, even if it's their direct reports, they would rather have somebody delegated to handle it or take it to
Mhm.
HR. I think the
Yes.
reason why I can give to perspective, it's because before I even became a CEO, I was an HR practitioner, still am, first. So I would normally get called upon by a GM, by the president, and say, Daisy, I have a problem. Okay, what's the problem? And sometimes the problem has to do with him and his direct report. I said, so why are you calling me? I mean, if it's your direct report, then talk to the person. I mean, give the person a chance to be able to defend himself, or at least answer what your issues are. Don't escalate
Yeah.
to HR first. But
Mm-mm.
often, even if they're CEO, they would tell me, vulnerably, openly say, but Daisy, I don't know how to handle. That's your turn. That's you being HR. And I think that's the reason why, more than ever, this is needed. It's not, HR is human resource, but leadership is HR too. It's not just purely the job of the HR, it's a job of any leader to handle people. As long as you have people under you, it's your job. And conflict, whether you like it or not, is inevitably part of your life.
Yeah. Which brings me to the next question. Is there a technique, a specific communication, a skill that we need to learn as HR practitioners or as aspiring CEOs like you?
Ako kasi,
Tough question.
again, siguro, I don't want it to be just exclusive just because you're a CEO. I would rather I say it as it happens to anybody, because conflict is not just purely isolated to people that are people leaders. Conflict
Mm-mm.
happens at home. Conflict happens in marriages, in parenthood, children and parents fighting all the time. It happens in school. It happens anywhere. So I don't like to get limited in the sense that just because you're CEO, you have the template or
Yeah.
magic formula. There's no such thing as a magic formula, because people are different. People evolve, times evolve, change is inevitable in as much as conflict is. Um, but there are things I think that never change. And to me, there are three things that will never change,
Okay.
regardless of your position.
Mm-hmm.
When you view conflict more as number one, recognizing what the issue is. Where is the conflict coming from? Take away the person, take away the one opening it, take away the source of the one bringing it out there, take that away. Forget about the person and just focus merely what is the conflict about? What is the issue that is being raised? Because once you actually recognize that first, everything else becomes easy, right? And then the next thing that you have to do is consider the personalities of people, because there are those that are very dominant, very um, outspoken. And we have this concept that just because a person is dominant or loud, boisterous, that they're always right. That's not often the case. I've known many people that are very quiet, but once they actually make an argument, boom, drop mic. Talagang sobrang wala na, case closed, right? So you also have to look into if if you're in the middle of conflict and you're supposed to be managing it, resolving it as a leader. First off, take away their personalities, focus first on the issue. Once that is tackled, that means you're more objectively able to identify, dito yung source ng problem, here's where it's coming from. Now, take that away first. And then now, step two, consider the personalities. Diba? Is there a chance for this so A and B reconciling because one is more humble, one is more open? If you're encountering a situation where both are dominant and both will never admit that they're wrong and they're always thinking they're right, then you will probably recognize that you will just be stuck in the middle and there is no way you're going to win because neither of them will buck. And that's where your leadership comes in. That's when you start saying, I don't care what your issues are, but I do care about the fact that there is disharmony within the organization. And as CEO, I don't want that. You have to force them to make a resolution amongst themselves. Otherwise, you're going to take that right away from them and you're going to leverage on the fact that you are still the head. And that's something I think most often people don't want to happen. That's the highest of the highest escalation, right? And then third, one of the things that I think at any situation that can cultivate an environment of open communication. And I think when people are held accountable to own their actions, you see, even if there's conflict, even if there's somebody provoking you, even if the person, you have every right to feel the right to defend yourself. At the end of the day, you still have the right to be owning up to your feelings, your emotions, and your words.
Ganda, grabe.
Diba? Emotions mo yun. You can't control what the other may say, but you still have the right to stop talking when it's hurtful,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
to stop fighting when it's unnecessary, and to make a decision whether to resolve or walk away because it's nonsense.
Okay. Which brings me to the next one. What are some of the common barriers that we women encounter when there's conflict in management? And how do we handle this? How do we address this?
I can see my husband smiling. I think I think God created women to be tough because he knew, that it's gonna be tough talaga life. Because even when we're young, right? Society would normally look at us as a weaker gender, supposedly. But ironically, we're supposed to be weaker, but then we're supposed to be given all the assignments, meaning we're the ones in charge of the house, we're the ones in charge of the children, we're the ones even, in charge of the workplace, bringing in supposedly income if one could not sustain it. So if we're supposed to be less than the men, how come we don't live like a princess? We're being looked upon as helpers, and that's something I think we all encounter from the get-go, right? Now, if you look at the corporate world, I've had my personal experience also when, because I became a manager at the age of 21. I was only just 6 months into the working experience. And I didn't know that the vice president of HR back then was actually already looking for a replacement. And there were those who have been more senior than I am, 5, 6, 7, far older. But when he, made a recommendation, who will he be recommending a successor? Everybody was flabbergasted, including me. When he made me as the successor, I said, "What do I know about all these? I'm just a newly grad, didn't know anything." And I was crying most often than not. And then he would tell me, and I asked him, "What did you see in me? I mean, I don't know anything." He said, "Skills can be learned, but humility cannot. It's character that I see in you who has the potential to actually lead." And he told me, "I'm giving you a chance of a lifetime, a rare opportunity. It's up to you to maintain it." And by God's grace, there was never looking back. But it was not an easy road to take, because during board meetings, I'm saying one thing, everybody was against it. And then another man says it, exactly the same thing, just paraphrase it, yet everybody agreed. And I was like, is it the way I spoke, or is it just because I'm young, or it's because I'm a woman? It was hard at first to overcome. But then I started to learn not to overthink, and I started to learn to trust God and myself. In every season, nothing happens by accident. God allowed me to be in that season, get promoted at that rare opportunity for a purpose. And I, for one, should not be negligent by throwing that away. Rather, as a good steward, take good care of it.
Okay. Sige. Meron akong question. Very tough na to. We're getting deeper. Okay. So, partner, I'm gonna ask lang muna this one, ha. What are the key conflict management skills and competencies that the chief executive, and we were discussing this. So we want to know more because you shared this with us. And Laylord, AJ, and I were really inspired. So we want that inspiration to be shared to whoever it is that's listening right now, watching right now, and who's gonna watch this. We want to know more about it. So please share.
Um, ito kasi, no, it's hard because, when we're all starting off in our career, we work so hard, right? And then the way we work so hard, we get promoted along the way. We started off very idealistic about many things, saying we can make changes, we'll do changes once we get to that position. But when we become suddenly leaders and we're not prepared for it emotionally, as Paul had said last week, or spiritually, our tendency sometimes is to become self-serving rather than people serving, because far too many people would would not tell you the real thing about how they look at you, but say things that they feel you want to hear. And when you start allowing those good compliments to get into you, and you become ego centered and bloated, you actually lose a lot of good perspectives in life, because it becomes more I, me, and myself. And then that's something I think that as a CEO or as any leader at that, we should be very careful about. Because to whom God has given much, much is also expected from us. How you make or break a person depends on how you lead them by the words that you speak and how you build them up. You can either build or break people. And I would rather that as a CEO, you lead based on character rather than just skill. Character is what you do when no one else is looking. But having my faith in Christ also, I think that adds on even more pressure to be accountable, because other than the fact that it's character, it becomes godly character. You know, I often say this to myself, if the words I speak and the things I do becomes publicized by Jesus, what would I feel? Because at the end of the day, that's really what life is about. You're going to be holding ourselves accountable in front of God and saying, what have you done? And you can't say, oh, I've done so much, Lord, because I've been the manager of these things, so and so. I've been a CEO of so and so. God doesn't care about that. He has the highest and highest of all positions, but He does care the way you have lived your life. And that's character. That's priceless. That's a trait not every leader or CEO may have.
Partner, take it away. Your turn.
Nag-iising si AJ. Pahirap naman
Oo.
ako.
You're getting harder. Miss Bless, probably you can continue.
Go continue. Sige. How can CEOs effectively handle conflicts within your organization or within the community, and then both in the individual and then the team levels? Kasi di ba, meron siyang hierarchy within the organization, and then also in the community, and also sa house. So how does that, how can we handle that?
Again, I keep saying this, no? It doesn't matter if you're handling conflict on an individual level, or the team level, or a corporate level, even on national level. I always say this: the way you handle it best is take away your emotions. Look at the issue, because sometimes the conflict is needed to be a catalyst of change. But if your mind is already closed and your emotions are already triggered, you lose that door of opportunity to make a change that you want to be happening. You know what I mean? And that's important. When somebody disagrees with me, let's say I'm training and facilitating, and somebody keeps asking me questions, I don't take it against the person. In fact, I like it because it challenges me now to think. Because no one is perfect. There are many perspectives in life. The richness of everybody's experience may not necessarily something that you have, but we learn from
Mhm.
others as well. And by not being open into it, you're already opening yourselves to conflict. Communication is important. Respect of each other's difference is very important. Being vulnerable. Most leadership workshop would teach you not to be vulnerable. You have to be non-emotional. You have to be all these things. And the tendency is, instead of the people and the leader becoming close, there is that barrier. Yeah, and that's something that you don't want. Conflicts arises when there is lack of communication, if there is distance, if there is that, that feeling that your leader, I'm this one only. Even without people speaking, there's already existence of conflict, because you're not able to bring up from the person her thoughts, his views, nothing. And I don't like to lead an organization when I'm the only one right. It's not gonna be nice, right? It's not gonna be nice. It's not gonna be healthy. You can disagree to agree at the end of the day.
Okay. This one is medyo mas malalim na to. How can a CEO leverage your leadership position to foster a culture of open communication, collaboration, constructive conflict resolution within the organization? So tatlo siya, no? Culture of open communication, collaboration, and constructive conflict resolution. Unahin natin yung open communication, yung culture of open communication. So how do you leverage that?
Siguro I'll qualify my answer by an example, no? As an HR practitioner for many years, and also holding an executive seat, no, before, I would often attend annual strategies, right? And you would talk about issues, you would talk about goal setting, and then you would talk about strategies, correct? Now, sometimes part of those discussions would involve training people. There is a need. If people are having conflict, therefore they need a training on conflict management. But I would have to be, I don't know, the CEO's here with me if they're not gonna take it against me. But In my years of HR experience, I find it odd that whenever I report the attendance, they would require other people to attend that training, but the senior level up don't. And you often find yourself having a gap and an issue because you have this group of people willing to change, willing to resolve conflict, but then you have this set of leaders who just delegated, who just decided that they needed it,
Yun.
but they themselves don't own it, they themselves didn't
Yes.
participate, therefore there's a big conflict. As leaders, regardless, and I don't like to be called CEO, I'd like to be called child of God, right? Doesn't matter what your title is. If you are a leader, you set the example. You be the one to be the first in the training line. You be the one to be first serving people because people will follow you. Not because you force it on their throat, not because of your title, but because they saw your exemplified leadership. You modeled the way. And I think that's even more effective because, as a sales, people in sales, ikaw ba Bless, ikaw ba AJ, do you often buy products because they make you they force sell that on you? Di ba ayaw mo yon? Kasi parang, teka lang, parang pinilit mo akong bilhin. The best salesman in the world are those who know how to probe, those how to do training analysis, need analysis, and those who ask questions, right? When
Sa you,
people
sa
ask
din.
actually questions,
Oo nga. Pero hindi na siya nag-church.
Sorry, there's somebody who's can you unmute it, AJ, please?
so sorry, medyo na-distract ako. Where was I?
Ako rin. Sorry. Exemplify. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So when a salesman, diba, that is a best at the craft, sells products without the customers knowing that they they actually bought something. And that's the same with leaders. When people see that in your life, that it's not just a brand, it's not just a gimmick, it's not just a program that you thought of for the year, but it's actually something they see as a lifestyle, something that you hold dear, I think they will follow you. And that starts in open communication. Many people don't want to communicate because they want to have that, barrier. I'm a leader, you're not. But Jesus didn't do that. He stripped himself of his divinity, become man, and be at the level of creation. So I don't think we should not do the same thing as well. It takes a lot to actually go down.
How about dun sa part ng collaboration, working together, and then inspiring each other, and then helping each other? In terms of leveraging leadership, do you go for that? Or what's your perspective pagdating dun sa collaboration?
Collaboration is key because no matter how good you are, if you're the only one doing it, you won't be able to succeed. You need people to be able to work with. You need people to be able to push you into keeping pressing on, right? And it's important. It's important as a leader to develop collaboration and an environment of community. I'd rather that it's called community, no?
Yeah.
Where everybody is accepted, where everybody also has an open heart, that open mind, that when you're being rebuked, it's nothing personal, but there's good intention and well-meaning intention behind it. And leaders dictate kasi. Leaders dictate the mood. Leaders dictate the culture.
That's the term, eh. The leaders would dictate. That's a very good term. But when a leader dictates, what are the things that the leader should do? Should they be like parang Hitler type ba, or what kind of paano ba? How do I say it? Or paano dapat i-dictate ng maayos ng isang leader?
I
Ang
saw
task or whatever.
I saw a comment from Paul, no? I don't know if Paul said, make sure collaboration is defined correctly. In some cases, collaborations means following orders. That I agree. When you say collaboration kasi, everybody has different roles, right? So there will be time you're a peer. There will be time you're rolling up your sleeves and working, together with the rest. But if everybody's working and you lack direction, somebody also would have to take the lead and give orders and instructions. And I think that's where Paul is coming from, right?
Recording in progress.
And I actually agree with that. I do agree with that in that sense, because collab means everybody knows the roles, everybody knows clearly the direction they're going, and everybody is working harmoniously towards it. When I say harmoniously, doesn't mean an absence of conflict, but even in conflict, there is that respect.
Ganda. Wala akong masabi bigla. Okay, the next part would be, the top 30 awards that you got. Can you tell us about it? Can you give us your journey about it? Kasi it's about integrity and we would want to know what is it all about? Nahimik si Miss Daisy.
My husband is my top 30. Say this, no? The top 30 journey. The top 30 journey is actually interesting. You know, I have with me two critical people that played a very significant role into it. One is Kuya Boris, and the other is John. Now, I, you know, you have to understand where I'm coming from, right? I'm a newbie. I just started off as a CEO in 2018, right? So there are those like Kuya Boris, no, na talagang tumanda na. And there are lots of guys ahead of us. And, you know, I don't feel like I had what it took to be there. You know, I always get nominated before Philippines top 100, top all these, but I've never really thought about really thinking I measured up. For one thing,
Why?
paano ba to, Kuya Boy? Well, kasi, for one thing, when you used to be a global HR executive, even without you asserting, people, wow. You know, people like, wow. And then you transitioning now to president and CEO, but then the name of your organization, even if it's an NGO, is Jesus Helps Ministries, people think it's a church, you know? People think it's an actual organization. So sometimes they look down on you at that. Don't talk to that because I think it's not an organization, it's actually an advocacy. So and I don't like to argue or justify to people who I am and what I do. You know, I just do. And then number two, you have to accept the fact that in the community, there's also what you call networking. No, but I do have Kingdom Network. I have God behind me, right? So, but, you know, reality bites. You know, sometimes when people ask you, what do you do? I'm a president and CEO. Of what? If you're breakthrough leadership, wow, Kuya Boris. But then they see you, Jesus Helps Ministries. And then suddenly they say, okay, hello, di pa ako tapos. People don't even bother thinking that it's a multi-million NGO, but then they just lose interest because they heard Jesus and then nonetheless, wala na. But it's actually it's an NGO, very legitimate, like Save the Children and the like. So I kind of, in a way, lost faith, if I may be honest. I don't want to join those awards because I don't think I had what it took. I don't think I had the right connections. And come on, you have people that were nominated like Chinkitan, Francisco. Naku naman, di naman po ako ilusyonada, right? So I said, I don't like. And then Kuya Boris texted me, Daisy, you know, people are looking for integrity, compassion, these 5 values. And I know that you are this person. And, you know, I want to nominate you. I said, Kuya, wag na. But then Kuya Boris said, no. I mean, if it's just any other award, I would agree with you. But all the traits that are being highlighted here is what Jesus Helps Ministries is about. And that, to me, I think, led to me thinking, it's not about me. It's about an opportunity, a door of opportunity, not to look at it as a conflict, but rather as an opportunity to bring the name of Jesus out there. But I was still having my second thought, which brings back to my second point, accountability to your spouses. Alam mo yung asawa ko, you know, we may not agree on many things at times, but he is my accountable partner. So I was telling him, but this is how I feel, John. I understand where Kuya Boris is coming from, but I still don't want it. I don't want to be hurt. You know, I get nominated and then boink, you know, nandun ka nga sa 30 or baka sa 31, masakit. You know, it's gonna be hurtful. But John told me a very simple, profound thing. In all your journey, transitioning from corporate to NGO, Christian NGO, Kuya Boris has always been used by God as a vessel of milestone. I said, oh nga no. Maybe, John said, God is making a move to open doors for you, and your way of thinking is hindering that from happening. And then I said, oh, that's open rebuke. That hurt, but it's a much needed rebuke. So I said, sige na nga, you know, I'll just go through the whole thing and let God do the rest. So when it came out, and I'm number 2,
Diba? Number two.
2, and then top leader for integrity, I would have thought it's in, you know, it's compassion, diba? Kasi puro ako, you know, charity work, but integrity, I said, Lord, what are you trying to tell me? But then who would have thought that integrity is the cement that was needed to affirm that in the many things that people don't see what I was doing because they're not seeing it, I was following the law, I was following the Bible, I was compliant with the laws, the registration and all. And even if you donate 20 pesos to our organization, we still issue an OR. I never thought that the things that God guided me 5 years ago will lead me to where I am at now. And what started 2018 as a small room has now become a multi-million expanded organization.
Jay, ano masasabi mo? Wala akong masabi.
Sana
It's
pwede bang
speechless.
isingit mo si Kuya Boris sa stream ba?
Sige.
I think
Sir
pwede naman natin
Boris,
isingit.
Sir Boris, we want to know what's on your mind. And Sir John Callanta, we also want to know what's on your mind. Kasi we want you to be a part of this. We're in a community and we want to know that
Naghugot eh.
leaders. Kasi you're instrumental po eh. So we want to know your what's on your mind right now.
Si John.
Sir John, ikaw muna raw po.
Una.
My husband. Ayan, he's my husband.
Of course, I live with Daisy every day, right? And there's a certain, it's hard to have a level of objectivity, but it is possible, eh? Because I also see how she deals with people, and it doesn't matter whether you're a rich person or you're a simple person. She treats you with love and respect, and there's this humility. And you know, she just treats you properly, treats you well, you know, and treats you like the way God looks at you, you know. And I felt na if there's one person I could help, you know, in with that nomination, I'd like to do that for a person like that, even if it's not my wife. She just happened to be also my wife, you know. So I wanted to do that, you know. I felt it was the right thing to do. And so we're just grateful to God because we couldn't really say that it was because of us. I mean, that was the one task that God gave me. I just did it, and I just left it up to Him.
Sir Boris.
Okay, sige na, napilitan.
Napilitan talaga.
I love Daisy, and if trivia lang, Daisy was my client. She's my client, and I won't mention the organization, but you know that God is moving in your life when things fall into places. And John and I was just talking a while ago how we met in a youth camp, and pinag-usapan namin lahat ng mga exes niya and all that. But we are when God connects people, there's an opportunity there. When God connected me with Daisy, God led the transformation of that organization, at least in certain people. And I know Francis is here, and Francis is now nandamay pa ng iba. Francis is now the country ministry coordinator of Lead Like Jesus, and I wouldn't have met Francis if Daisy was not my client. So there's that something there, and you really just have to put a spotlight on something when you know that God is at work. And I guess that's the principle behind what I'm saying right now. When God is at work and He just invites you to be part of His work, you don't say no. And Daisy's that kind of person. And if my role is to spotlight that, then I will do that because God is at work. And why wouldn't you spotlight something good that God is doing? Because it will help other people. And I'm sure Daisy will put a spotlight on other people eventually. And that's how it works. That's how God's economy works. And yun. And so don't give me too much credit, Daisy, because I was just like turning on the light.
And I'm so happy then, no, I saw within the community, you have people that, I mentor online, women mentorship. So I see Michelle, I see Myla, I see Bex, joining. And, it's just like what Kuya did to me, I'm also doing to them, leading by example and hoping that, as as you let them go and they have ministries of their own, like, Lord, thank you. And you're supposed to duplicate, you're supposed to disciple, you're supposed to be not just you, you're supposed to expand what God's work is if being done in your life. So, yun.
And since na-mention ka, Sir Francis, pwede ka din bang magbigay ng
Si
iyong
Francis,
words?
babae yan, ma'am. She's a girl.
Francis.
Okay po. Can you, share, Miss Francis? Ayan, Miss Francis, go ahead.
Hi.
Sorry.
Yes, I
Opo,
love
go
na
ahead.
damay-damay talaga.
Opo.
No, but
We're
We're in the community, so we might as well po
yeah.
share. Opo,
No,
opo.
I just absolutely echo everything that has been said so far. That in the years that we've just connected with each other as a community, with Daisy, somebody that I used to work with Boris, and being able to attend a Lead Like Jesus encounter that he taught, actually, even that is very pivotal to the journey that even I have been on in the last few years. As he mentioned, I've 20 years in corporate, but I left my corporate career to give more of my time to whatever God has called me to do. And Lead Like Jesus is huge part of that. And I could not be happier, and just having Boris there, as a mentor until today, na parang in this season, he's opening doors for us in corporate education, and Daisy as well as a mentor spiritually. It's just it's wonderful to be able to have the opportunity to work with people that are obviously just so passionate, first and foremost, about God, and so unapologetic. I love the conversation that's happening here because we're talking about leadership, we're talking about conflict management, we're talking about so many different things, but we're also so unapologetic about the fact that the many things that are happening in our life, none of that is credit to our own strength or our own power, but all of that is credit to how God has just moved in our life, no? And it's wonderful again to just be sitting here and listening to all these stories, as I'm sure if we tapped on each and every person that's here today, they'll have their own stories as well of how Jesus is moving in their leadership and in their lives. And really, this is the kind of community that we want to be able to create, right? Even as we're coming together as corporate educators under BFJ, thank you again, Boris, right? We want this where there's really that acknowledgement na it's not us alam mo yun? And it just becomes even much more precious, just knowing that all that we have is a gift, even the leadership that we have, the abilities that we have, and finding ways to give those gifts back to God and to other people. That's what makes all of this really worth it. So yeah, I hope that helps in adding that, no?
It is po. Kasi it really is a lot. Kahit po sa aming dalawa ni Laylord, they know that. So thank you also for accepting both of us and those people that we are bringing pa dito sa community. We're very, very happy.
Andyan
Miss
si
Daisy.
Nelson, andyan din si Grace.
Oo, sir.
Ang daming
Oo
pwede.
nga Actually, ang saya.
It's about, I don't want to be focused on me because at the end of the day, conflict is something that happens to anyone at any point. So This is what community is about. We avoid conflict because we talk about it without emotions, but when you also know where, it's all coming from, So Grace, ikaw, kinulit ko
Ayan,
yung
ayan.
yung
Oh,
host
go
ko
ahead,
siya.
Miss Daisy. Go
Sorry.
ahead, Miss Daisy.
Si Grace.
Miss Grace daw. Miss Grace?
I'm assuming. Is it me? Am I the only Grace in the room?
Yay!
Opo.
Normally,
Go
kasi
po.
there would be 1 or 2, 3 Graces. So now
Ako po yung bless, ikaw po yung Grace.
okay. Wow, I was put on the spot.
Opo.
Sorry, I actually came in a bit late because I was coming in from another meeting, but I'm glad that I just I caught the discussion and the conversations. I honestly don't know what the question is. So I don't know what to respond to.
No, not a question. I
Sorry.
think from another also founder and CEO, diba? And you being a woman at that. I think, and also being a Christian at that, I think it would be nice also if you can put on the table your point of view, like how do you handle conflict given all these things? Kasi pareho lang eh. You're a CEO,
Yeah.
you're a Christian, and you're a woman at that. It would be nice to have another's perspective, right?
I think for us women, one of the challenges is how to manage emotions, especially if it's the time of the month. I mean, that's a reality, really. And if you're of a certain age, say when you're in your mid-40s going to your 50s, and the hormones are going crazy, the reality is biologically it's difficult to handle situations sometimes. But I do believe that if God has called us to a certain role, He also equips and He also gives grace when the burdens grow greater. I think that's when I'm thankful that my parents gave me a common name as Grace, because it's not a very common thing to be gracious. But I think one of the things that has helped me in the face of conflict, in fact, it's one of the reasons why I'm late, because I was managing conflict somewhere else, is that it always helps to see people, as persons, and to always remember who the real enemy is in every situation. And it's not the person that is in front of you. A lot of times, especially if you are really intent on bringing glory to God in whatever you do, the enemy will not sit down and rest. He will do all that he can to disrupt what God is doing in the work that God has started in us, in each of us. And I have noticed that if conflict does not come from outside of the organization, externally, it comes from inside. And that has happened to us several times. And I always just ask the Lord to give me discernment when something like that is brewing and is happening, because if the enemy cannot destroy us from without, he'll try to destroy us from within. And so it always helps to have perspective in every situation. I remember my husband, si Mang, who's also a very good leader. In fact, I would consider him as one of my mentors in leadership, because we've been in a lot of leadership situations na cross-cultural then, and a lot of conflicts happen when you're dealing with cross-cultural situations. He would always say, before you jump into conclusions, hear all the stories, hear all sides, and then that will help you gain perspective. And sometimes it's easier to just respond to the moment, make a remark or make a decision as a leader, instead of waiting it out and looking to God for something. Parang gusto mo mabilis ma-solve yung ganyan. But over the years, siguro tumatanda na rin ako. Over the years, I have learned to wait, to allow time to sift through the emotions, and then to see what God is trying to do in the midst of the conflict, the chaos, or whatever the situation may be. And then approach each person and listen. Bear the emotions that come out, because definitely there will be emotions that will come your way. Whether lalaki or babae ang kausap mo, may emosyon yan kasi tao yan. And then master my own emotions so that my emotions does not get the better of me in the situation, especially as a leader. And then as you listen to each person, makikita mo mayroon talaga sila lahat pinanggagalingan. And a lot of times, ang na-observe ko, yung conflict, it's just a matter of miscommunication. Minsan, in the simplest thing, nagmi-miscommunicate lang. Especially if you're dealing with a cross-cultural team. And like I said earlier, my husband and I are always in a cross-cultural situation. So we need to understand a lot of times na, ay, lost in translation lang, kaya nagkakagulo. Okay? It's just a matter of this word na ito yung ginamit, hindi niya naiintindihan in that same way. And then when you thresh things out, yun pala they're talking about the same thing or they want the same thing to happen. And then yun, makikita mo na ay nako, our enemy talaga, he's out there to destroy. So then you gain perspective na naman and then you bring people together na naman. The other thing that really helps us, helps me and my husband over
Recording
the years
stopped.
is bringing our team together for yung get-togethers, yung mga gatherings wherein we don't talk about work. Yung downtime lang talaga and you see each personality, the uniqueness of each personality come out. Then we begin to understand them even more. Sino ang pikon? Sino yung mapagbiro talaga? Sino yung tahimik lang? Sino yung dadaldal the entire time? And that helps us manage conflict before it happens because we get to know our team better. So we bring them to situations where they can let their hair down, they can be themselves, and they're not pressured to just talk about work or things that they know we would want to hear as their leaders or as their bosses, ganyan. And then we also, by doing so, we create a safe space for every member of the team. And we found it to be so beneficial na pag may mga ganong moments yung team, nagkaraoke lang kami, yung ganyan, or nagplay ng sports, or nagkape-kape lang, walang ibang pinag-uusapan, or they come to our house and we just, kasi our home is an open home for our team, no? So they would just come and do, mga senseless things, parang senseless things, ganyan. Tapos pagbalik namin sa work situation, mas may nagje-gel, mas may relationship na, mas may pasensya na sila sa isa't isa, and everybody's kinder to each other. Kasi yun yung lagi ko sinasabi, it always pays to be kind. To be kind in words, to be kind in deeds, because against that, there's no law against that. So whatever the situation would be, personally, I would choose kindness over any other, anong tawag dito? Decision. Between being kind and being punitive, which one will I choose as a leader? I think I would rather be kind. Parang ganun. So yun lang. Yun lang yung...
Thank you, Miss Grace, for that. Okay, I have... Miss Daisy, this is the last. Why do you do what you do? And how do we connect with you? Where do we find you?
What do I do? Why do I do what I do?
Yeah,
Because
why
God
do you
told
do
me
what
so.
you do? And
Because
then-
God called me. I think it's not. I don't think it's something I would have voluntarily do so if God did not call me. I mean, nobody would have probably just walk away from a very lucrative, high-paying career, right? So credit to God, He called me. But other than the fact He called me, I also said, "Here I am, O Lord, send me." It takes two, right? He called me, I responded to that call of action, and here I am. What I do, Jesus Hugs Ministries is not a church. So a lot of you may think it's actually an advocacy. It's an NGO, Christian NGO that aims to actually provide free community and training and support for children with special needs, including parents. Because for people who may not know it, my son used to be autistic, but by God's grace has been healed totally. And as such, that's what we do. And you can see Michelle, you can see Myla, you can see Bex. These are mothers who also had, and I also use the word had, children with autism, but has been healed as well. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that there is community, there is that spiritual faith in Christ, and with God, nothing is impossible because He's able. If people would want to actually look for me, just look for my name. They see Lacuanan-Callanta. Please include Lacuanan. There's so many Callanta, not because they're wives of my husband, but because they just happen to have the same surnames. So do look for my name, Daisy Lacuanan-Callanta. And Jesus Hugs Ministries, we're in LinkedIn, we're in Facebook, and we also are active in YouTube as well. So there you go. Thank you very much.
There you have it. Yeah.
Thank you, DFJ Corporate Online, for this privileged and blessed opportunity to be able to impart and be part.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, to summarize lang, so we've discussed leadership, HR, professional development, conflict resolution, and evangelism, which is very, very good for this session. So, with that said, I would like to thank everybody, Sir Ariel Tolentino, for the Zoom. And eventually, we're going to have the StreamYard. So, thank you, Miss Daisy, and then Laylord. And also, the next guest would be Miss Doreen Cooper.
Yay!
So, yeah, we're looking forward to that. And then, susunod na rin po yung iba nating mga guests. If you have any more questions, please, you can get in touch with us. And, di ba, sa dami nung na-discuss, hindi ko na alam kung ano pa yung sasabihin. AJ, do you want to say something? Or Sir Boris?
Actually, everything's been covered. It's very exhaustive.
Okay, sige.
Comprehensive. Thank you
Sir
very much.
Boris? Yes, Sir Boris, meron ka pang gustong sabihin?
I just enjoyed being with you guys. So thank you for that conversation, Daisy and Bless.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. But please do not leave. We're gonna have a picture taking, but we're going, I don't know. We're going off the